Hello. This is Jonathan, and you're listening to the Joney Talks podcast, the place where we help you achieve your financial goals. Hola, amigos. Hope you're having a great day wherever you are. And if you're a new listener to the show, special warm welcome to you. I really appreciate you tuning into the show. And if you're a returning listener, welcome back. I appreciate it even more. In today's episode, we will speak to my friend Mr. Wealthster from the Wealthster. We met on Twitter, and I must say I enjoy his tweets. He's a London-based personal finance blogger and started his journey to financial independence 3 years ago. His journey to FI started by being fed up with his job, but was that reason enough to wish to retire, or did he simply need a new job? We will talk about how he changed his mindset about his career, his finances, and we will go into the detail of his newfound plan to reach financial independence. And all of this despite living in a high cost of living city. This episode is for you if you are at a crossroads in your career, and this will be particularly interesting if you live in an expensive city and want to reach financial independence. So without further ado, let's hear the interview. Hello, Mr. Wealthster. How are you doing tonight?
Hi, Jonathan. Yes, very good. Thank you. Thanks for having me on the show.
Yes, I'm very excited to have you on. And because today we will speak to you about your journey to FIRE. So FIRE stands for Financial Independence Retiring Early. And you have quite the story and quite the profile. So if I remember correctly, you are a civil engineer. You've been working around in the desert. I mean, you're currently based in London, but you have worked in several places, including the desert. I mean, like the Saudi Arabia, was it, or Emirates?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, back in 2008 till 2011, I was in Qatar. In Doha, before it was well known. I don't want to sound like a hipster, but it really wasn't anything to write home about back then. And we were out there building the airport with my old company.
Oh wow!
And so the new Qatar Airways airport was something I got to work on. And I mean, to be honest, one of the happiest days of my life was the day I left there. But I can't say I enjoyed it particularly much. There was some highlights, but there was a lot of lowlights. But it was a definitely character building experience.
Okay, very good. So you are with your civil engineering background, you've been in construction, and as well you took some law degree, or at least some additional course in law. Is that correct?
That's right. I did my civil engineering for probably about 10 years, and I kept getting involved in the sort of legal side of things, like the contracts and the negligence side of things, and I find it really interesting. So I decided to study law, and in the UK you can do what's called a law conversion course. So if you've already got a degree, you can study law if you were doing it full time 1 year, or as I did it part time in the evenings for 2 years. And I did it and found it awesome. And I took it a bit further. I took a year out to study it full time because I got a scholarship to study to become what's called a barrister in the UK. So that's
the lawyers. Somebody who serves coffee, then.
That's right. Yeah, it's very easy to confuse the two. But they're the ones that wear the wigs and the gowns. And I studied it for a year at Gray's Inn in London, and it was a great year out. To be honest, it taught me all kinds of skills, cross examination, and how to write a good particulars of claim. But it was honestly, it was one of the best years of my life that year. And I qualified as a barrister in 2018, just before I found FIRE, to be honest. So it's good.
Okay, very good. So you're quite a skilled professional. So you're working today still, is that still in the construction today?
I've actually been able to combine both, actually. So what I do is I actually am a consultant to lawyers, and I advise them on complicated construction cases. So if you've got a dispute, let's say you're building an airport in Qatar and you've got a big dispute between a contractor and the client, yes, I can advise the lawyers on each side probably what happened. So it's a bit of a forensic kind of role. Mm-hmm. Also, it's a bit of an expert witness role as well. So I may be called upon to give evidence in court and get a grilling from the lawyers. I mean, all these things tend to be done behind closed doors because it's arbitration. So it's quite an interesting line of work. I mean, I'm quite new to it. I only really started doing this about 14 months ago. Yep. So it's been great, and it's, you know, for me, it's actually, ironically, it's rejuvenated my interest in working. So I think I was just getting fed up of construction, which is why I went off and did these extra studies and things. And you know, now I'm like, no, I actually quite enjoy this. So, you know, for me, like the fire started as definitely wanted to retire early to now maybe I'll retire. So I think that's a good thing, though. I think it's good.
Yeah. Okay. Very, very good. So yeah, in construction, you're getting fed up with the job. Was it the job or the atmosphere or the lifestyle of moving every time? What was the thing that wanted to make you retire, actually?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was, you know, it was a combination of those things, really. I mean, mm-hmm. The main thing that was bugging me, which is great when you're in your 20s, was actually, you know, moving around so much, because when you're building something, you have to be at the location it's being built to make sure it gets built correctly. So you can't work from home. And, you know, even now after the pandemic, I have friends of mine, you know, they're still working on the site. So that's just the reality of it. And, you know, the nature was that I might well be in London doing one project today, but maybe in 3 months' time, my company could have been saying, well, we actually need you to move to anywhere in the world. So Saudi Arabia springs to mind, and I just thought, you know, I'm just too old for that now. I just don't want to be uprooting my life every 2-3 years and moving to some god awful place, you know, or a great place. Some people got to move to Sydney, so I missed the boat on that one, but it's all swings roundabouts. And the other thing is, it's actually quite hard work, you know, and it's potentially dangerous as well, you know, working on a building site. Yeah. Not so much for the engineers, but I mean, accidents do happen. But you know, and it's also just a challenge, because, you know, you're there to enforce rules as much as anything, and it becomes a bit tedious after a while having to tell people to put their safety helmets on, or, you know, which are there for their own benefit, and they don't want to wear it, so they, you know, they swear at you and stuff. So I just got to the point, I'm like, I can't do this for the next 40 odd years. So something had to change, and that's what kind of spurred the interest in the legal and moving on. So, you know, it's been a long journey. It sort of started in 2014, and here we are in 2021. And I'm kind of in the place I wanted to be. So Perfect. It's taken a while, but it's been good.
Yeah, and I can recognize some of the things you say. I think we talked on Twitter about it, because I have worked in the oil and gas industry. I'm not an engineer, but I work in the procurement, so I still was in contact. I've been on sites. I've visited factories and stuff like this in my previous job. And now it's a similar but less, how can I say, technical. So I know all this safety stuff. It's very important. It's usually one of the key elements, one of the first things you say in those meetings. And what I recognize as well is the going on site, and as well, it can be exhausting, because I participated to a few days here and there. And then sometimes, I mean, you have 12-hour shifts and stuff. Huh? So it is good money. It is good extra money. At least in the oil and gas, it was good money. And the engineers that were on a vessel or whatever, I mean, they make good side income during those times. But usually as well, they get fed up at some point, because then the guys, when they start to be 35, 36, you know, they have the kids, whatever, they want to settle. They don't want to travel so much anymore or be on site for 2-3 months. But when you're 27, it's cool. Then you make a lot of money. So it's quite nice. So I can see, I can understand perfectly where you come from.
No, it's actually really similar, yeah. Because I mean, the oil, we always used to envy the oil people because we thought, oh, those guys get paid more than us.
Mm-hmm.
They get better leave cycles than us, and we were always quite envious of the oil and gas guys. But yeah, you're totally right. It's just the other point as well is just looking ahead even further. You're like, you look at the guys that are still going in their 50s, and you just think they're on their like third wife and strange kids and massively overweight, unhealthy. You just think, I don't want to do that. I don't want to end up like that. And yeah, so the only way you're not going to end up like that is by making the change.
Exactly.
Yeah. I actually forgot to mention I did work in Luxembourg for a while.
Oh, really?
Yeah, just we were managing a project to refit an office, or 4 offices actually, of a very well-known online retailer, which begins with A and ends with N. But I'm not allowed to say I was working on it. But it's they have some offices in Luxembourg, and I used to come out every 2 weeks on a flight from London. And it was an hour flight. I'd go out first thing in the morning and come back in the evening. So
yeah, very cool. And then yes, so then you get fed up, and then you start to discover the FIRE movement. I mean, how did that go? Because you started to look on internet, I want to retire, or I'm fed up with my job. I mean, what happened?
I found it bizarrely, like, I think when as I said, I started did that year out study law, and I wasn't able to get a job in as a barrister. It's highly competitive, and I thought, well, I'll go back to doing project management. And I was just, after about 3 months, I was like, this is, I'm right back to where I was before. And I think I had a few debts from that year out as well, and also from before. And I thought, how can I fix this? And it just came up. It was a New York Times article and I remember at the date, it was like September 2018. I think I came across it in around that time, and I read it, and I was just like, gosh, this just makes a lot of sense. I never considered compounding interest on anything before. So when they sort of did the simple maths, you're like, wait a minute, that doesn't seem that hard to get there. And this guy's already done it. He's already 35 and he's retired. I'm like, I'm 35. Like, what's going on? I could have done this already. So I was just immediately like hooked on it. And I started off just looking into investing, and the biggest mistake, and I always say this to people, is like I just jumped in and I put some money in the market I think I put it in the FTSE 100 index fund, and I realized that
so that's basically the UK stock exchange global index.
That is correct. Yes, that is correct. And back then, that was before the UK was completely screwed up. But I wouldn't recommend doing that now. But I realized that I was carrying quite a lot of debt, and the amount I was paying on my debts, like I had my car payment, I had some credit cards, and I had some other stuff to pay off. And I was just thinking, gosh, that's actually eating up quite a lot of my income. And I thought the only thing I can do here is to pay this off. So I went into my New Year's resolution was pay off my debts by 2 years' time. So I just started focusing on it. But the more you start focusing on it, the quicker it happens. And by February, I'd set up my website. I was like, I'm going to be a fire blogger, and I'm going to do this mainly just to make myself, at least if I can imagine that people are reading it, I'd be answering to somebody, because if it's just answering to me, I'd probably do what I feel like. And it took me about from February till September to pay off about £38,000 of debt. Admittedly, some of that was because I sold my car and I got rid of that big chunk quite easily. But I did pay off probably about 20,000 just by not doing much, living a lockdown life before lockdown was a thing. I locked myself down.
You were prepared.
Yeah. So I was sort of paying off, about putting in like 1,500 quid a month just to pay off as much as I could, and it just, as soon as it started going, you started getting closer to that zero number. It got more exciting, and
you just want to pay it off. I mean,
yeah, and I was actually speaking to my friend about this the other day. He was in New York at the time, and he's like, "Why didn't you come and visit me?" And I said, "Well, I was paying off my debts. That's I couldn't." And it's funny to think back then that I missed him being in New York, because it would have been a great trip, but I just had to be really harsh and not do things I wanted to do, and just be disciplined. And like I said, my goal was to do it in 2 years. I did it in in 9 months, and I couldn't believe I'd done it. And that, once you've achieved something like that, you can start looking at other things, like investing it into, doing it the other way around. So I've started to build it up, but it's good. So.
Mm-hmm. And sorry, but this debt was only the student debt from the law course?
No, it wasn't just the student debt. It was because what I did, I don't really even know what I did, to be honest. I just had a big amount of debt, and I think it was just a hangover from various issues that had happened throughout time. And it just, as you age, you kind of forget why you got that loan out, or must have been a reason for it. The car one's obvious, because I had a BMW. It was a lovely BMW as well, but I had to just say to myself, it's got to go. And the loans, they weren't student loans from, I guess they kind of were student loans, actually, in some fairness, but they were on credit cards that were 0% interest. So I was like, well, that's fine, because I'm not paying any interest. But the point is, you've still got the debt, haven't you?
Yes, so you still need to pay it off, huh?
Exactly. And I was just I think I was just continually just refinancing them on 0% and maybe paying off like 1,000 a year or something. So that's a crazy thing. I had like 38 grand of debt. I didn't really even know why I had it, and I still don't to this day. But the point is, it's gone now. So
no, it's good news. But the thing is, I don't hear a lot of debt stories in Europe in general. I even looked it up, because in the US it's famous. The credit card debts, and you hear the stories and you see the news and whatever. But in Europe we don't hear it so much. So in a way, I'm not glad to hear it, but it shows that it exists as well. Maybe on a lower scale, or maybe not so many people, but still it is here as well.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's I read Reddit quite often. There's a forum called UK Personal Finance, and it's very common to hear of stories of people that got themselves into bizarrely much worse debt than I was in. I mean, the ironic thing about the debt I had, I could easily afford to pay it. I mean, I think it was only total that I was only required to pay about maybe 600 quid a month, which wasn't a huge amount, really.
If you can save 15 quids for paying it off, then you can pay 600. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So I just to pay it off, I just put I started just paying 1,800 off a month instead, and didn't spend money on eating out or stuff. And that sounds boring, and to be honest, it was boring, but I knew it had to happen. And it was like I'd got myself there by being spendthrift and eating out, and I honestly don't know. It just ended up there. And that year out of not working probably didn't help either, because I didn't have much savings after that. So like I said, I did have a scholarship which helped pay, but it was kind of done on frugality. And that actually, I mean, that's the other thing, because that year out kind of spurred me to realize that I didn't need to have this extravagant lifestyle anymore, because I went back to being a student, and I just stopped I made my own lunch every day. I thought, I've got to be disciplined. I stopped going to the pub. And when I started working again, which is also combined with when I first found fire, I was like, well, wait a minute, why? I'll just keep the same expenses as I had when I was a student a year ago. And this is at age 35 or 6, and it was kind of coincided with me meeting my partner, who's also super frugal as well. She's like a great one for going to charity shops and finding the bargain of the century. Finding some jacket worth 400 quid new for like 20 quid or something.
Perfect.
So she's great at doing that. I've no clue when I go in these places, but yeah. So and that was it. You just realize, I can get by on a lot less, even in London.
Mm-hmm.
So that was kind of the shocking thing for me.
Because you're trying to achieve FIRE, this or at least financial independence. Now you have a job you enjoy, but you still try to work on this path. But you live in London. I mean, we all know that London is expensive. It's one of those large cities in Europe, one of the largest, even the largest. I don't know, but still, it's expensive to live there. No, I would expect it's very hard to reach FIRE.
On the face of it, it is an extremely expensive city. Mm-hmm. Housing is undoubtedly certainly the most expensive in the UK, probably in the Europe to some extent. There's no getting around that. So, even if you were a single person renting a room in London, the rents would be something between £600 to £800 a month.
Yeah.
Which I don't know what that is in euros. It's about €1,000 or something. So
around that, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it adds up. And but the interesting thing though is, and what I sort of realized when I was being a student, is it's actually there is ways to save money, because you have like your base cost of living, which is your rent, your utilities and whatnot, and utilities will be the same wherever you are in the UK. Mm-hmm. The council tax is sometimes a lot less, which is like the local authority tax. I don't know what you call it in Europe, but for me, for my flat, that's about £150 a month. But that's going to be similar wherever you are in the UK. Mm-hmm. So you have a kind of base expense level, but you do tend to earn more in London as well if you got a job, because they know. And I don't know if anyone's ever done. I'm sure people have done the maths, but I'm sure it doesn't pay off the extra expense what you earn more. If you had a similar job in, say, Manchester, and you look at how much you would be paying in mortgage or rent there compared to London, it's probably not worth it. But what you have in London is the opportunity of the big city. So I think there's the opportunity to go a lot further in your career and get the big paying jobs. So, that was the appeal for me of moving here. And, just working in my field as well, it's where a lot of the work is. So all the best buildings, like, you have the Shard, which probably people know about, and you have big rail projects like Crossrail, which is a huge underground tunnel across London. You don't get these projects elsewhere in the UK. So, and it's the same in other industries, like law is very big in London. It's all centered here. And, accountancy, all the finance stuff is in London. So you have these high paying jobs. And I guess that's part of the reason why it's so expensive, because everyone moves here to get these jobs. But, I think it's almost like the trick in London is not spending your money. It sounds silly to say it, but like you can go out. You can go into central London for like £2 on the tube and come back. And that's not very expensive wherever you live. Really, that's like a bus fare or something in most towns, except Luxembourg, which has got free transport. But
correct.
But if you're going. It's a lifestyle choice, isn't it? If you want to go to fancy restaurants and pay £100 a head, you can go and do that in London, no problem. You'll have really good time, but you won't have any cash left at the end of the month.
Yes, exactly. But do you still live like a student? Like you don't go to the pubs or to the restaurant, or I know you enjoy a good beer, so you don't do that anymore, Mr. Wealthster?
Well, I do. I must admit, I don't think I've ever not gone to the pub, except during lockdown when the pubs were shut.
Forced savings.
Yeah, and then we had this service, which was one of the clever pubs set it up, which was like a kind of Deliveroo for beer. So
awesome.
The pub wasn't allowed to open, but they could send a moped up with some beer, and I thought that was fantastic. That was the first lockdown we had back in April last year. So. But no, I do like to socialize, but I think as well, like in my fire journey, I did cut it back a lot.
Yeah.
And
Mm-hmm.
what I cut back on more than the pub was going and eating out, and I started cooking at home a lot more, and realized that actually the stuff you're eating out isn't actually that great, because you can actually cook just as good for yourself at home. And
Mm-hmm.
the weird thing is, like, again, I started cooking for health reasons rather than for money reasons, because when you eat out a lot, you tend to get put on some weight, to be honest. So I don't know if anyone's heard of a guy called Joe Wicks, but he's this kind of sports coach in the UK, and he's got these recipes that take 15 minutes to make, and they're all pretty healthy. And I just started cooking them, and I realized, wow, you can cook a really good meal in 15 minutes. So once you've learned that, you won't bother getting a takeaway, because you can just cook it yourself. And that's the thing, like, people, if you start adding up all these little things, like eating out at the restaurant 2-3 times a week, I'll get a takeaway because I'm a bit tired after working late, I'll meet my mate down the pub, I'll get an Uber home, 2 or 3 times a week, all your money's gone. So
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
if you start doing that, take the public transport, just have a couple of beers and eat something at home, you actually save a lot of money, because you're probably being paid more because you live in London. So it's just being a bit more conscious with your money, and I'm sure that's the case anywhere else really as well.
Yes, it's a bit like you say. Okay, I mean, I live in as well an expensive city. Luxembourg is tiny, but it's bloody expensive as well. But the public transport is free, but in the end, if you go to the restaurant every day, okay, you lose money a lot. You don't enjoy it anymore neither. But if you control your expenses, and you can go to the pub once in a while, of course, but I mean, by controlling this, in the end, you can have a good living, and you can save some money aside then for your hobbies or business or whatever. I mean, you naturally have a better career chances, opportunities, like you said, in the big city. But as well, you can also save money. It's not impossible. It's just don't get caught into the lifestyle.
Exactly. And no one says just because you've got a high paying job that you have to have a high flying lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I used to think that way. I used to think, when I was in the Middle East, I worked overseas, I didn't pay any tax, I didn't pay rent. I was 24, so
Awesome.
I was a complete idiot, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't spend my salary. I tried to spend my salary every month, and I realized I could save about half of it back then. So that's how I managed to buy my flat in London. I saved up, but that was kind of, I learned the lesson there that you can have a lot of money and be pretty miserable, even if you do have money. So it's about, like, how you live your life and things. And I think I'm much happier living a frugal life,
Mm-hmm.
and not trying to show off and be silly and look at me, I've got a fancy car. I love cars, by the way. I would never knock anyone for buying a nice car, but it doesn't make sense in London. I don't need it to go to work.
No, do you live in a? I will not ask you where you live, but do you live in a good location or practical location? Because I mean, in such a big city, sometimes the distances can be difficult, or you need to live far. I don't know, to have an affordable housing.
Yeah, I mean, I live on the border of zones 2 and 3, which, if you live in London, you'll know where that is. But for everyone else, it's about
yeah, but it's still decent. Zone 2.
Yeah,
yeah.
It's about. It's going to sound terrible. It's about 5 to 6 miles from the city centre. But considering that there are 6 zones, I'm quite. There's another 10 miles of city beyond me going outwards, so I'm okay.
Yeah, exactly.
And
yeah.
The good thing about living there is it's got good transport links. So I've got the tube nearby within about 7 minutes walk. I've got buses going everywhere. Mm-hmm. I've got a railway nearby. I can actually, I'm like 20 minutes away from the city centre of London, which is great for work and things. The other good thing is it's quite easy to cycle around London. So before I was working from home all the time, I used to cycle to work, and for me that's a great money saving tip, because cycling 10 miles a day actually is really good for you, as long as you don't get hit by a car or something. But
Sure.
it's it's good, and I was doing that. I kind of missed that actually, but it's a good habit to get into, and it also helps you save your money on the train going in. So all these little things add up, and you quickly realize that you're saving like 300-400 quid a month on things that you were just frittering away and going, why can't I save any money? Well, it's because of your lifestyle.
Yeah.
But yeah, sorry.
Yeah,
Go
no,
ahead.
it's good. And I think, okay, on the expenses, you're doing well. And we just show that it is possible to save money in a big city. But I mean, okay, everybody has their own job, etc. So, but at least there's ways to be reasonable. And the hardest is maybe to not live the lifestyle of the big city while living there. And of course, saving is one thing, but then investing. You were mentioning the FTSE index, so the kind of UK global index. What do you do now? Are you still doing that, or did you diversify into a European index, or do you do individual stocks? What do you do now to reach FIRE?
Yeah, so what I'm doing is a couple of things. So in the UK, we have what are called SIP, so it's called a self-invested pension plan. And most of my investments are in there because even though I was an idiot in my 20s and things, I actually did put away a fair amount of money into my pension because that's the best way to save without knowing you're saving. So I actually, when I started the FIRE journey, I started at about £100,000 invested. But I realized it was kind of just squandering in a pension. So I took it out, and I didn't really know what I was doing at the time, and I put it into this self-invested pension plan. And over the years, I've got more confident with it. So that is invested into ETF funds, and I'd say 50% is invested in the North America, which is the Standard & Poor 500, S&P 500, and it's doing very well this year. I think it's up nearly 20% since January. And the other one I like is it's called the FTSE Global Index, All World Index. So that's the idea. That is, I think it's got about 3,000 companies in there that the shares are completely diversified around the world, and it seems like a good place because what I like about the ETFs is, one, you can sell it really easily, and two, that if it's an index fund one, it's tracking the whole market. So I fully admit I'm not really confident enough to pick stocks on my own. I've been lucky with a few, but generally, they do say that fund managers, 80% of fund managers never beat the market. So if a professional fund manager can't do it, I don't see why I am suddenly going to be good at it. So I put it in the market, and I've taken my chances that way. And I am 100% stocks invested at the moment, which I feel like is a risk worth taking. It's a risk to get ahead, and so far it's working out well. So fingers crossed. That means there's going to be a stock market crash soon, by the way. So I'd probably, because I've said that now.
It's okay. You can buy more than me.
That's true. That's true. But yeah, I mean, generally as well, just to add to that, I mean, what I do is I put in the other second thing is we have what's called an ISA, which I think is called an individual savings account, and it's basically a great little thing. You can invest up to £20,000 a year, and you if it's in stocks and shares. So I do the same thing in that. So I invest in index funds in that, and I put in money that I've paid tax on, which goes in there, and it will stay in there forever, and I will never pay tax on it again. So it can grow to as much high figure as possible, and it's all capital gains tax free. And I realized that that's actually the trick is finding legal ways not to pay tax. That they're out there, they're available. It's just people don't know about them because you usually have to pay an advisor. But I try and write about them on my blog, and I try and tweet about them as well. So I try and share the knowledge I've gained in the last 3-4 years.
No, very good, because I mean this mean, this is not available in every country, but I mean, if it is, yeah, you should make use of it, because then you invest anyway in the stock market, you get the returns, and then you don't pay capital gain tax, etc. And okay, that's great, because usually that eats up a little bit of your profit. So no, if you can really do it, depending on the country where you live, etc. I mean, in Luxembourg and in Belgium, you don't have capital gains tax on your stocks.
That's great. That's great.
In Belgium, you don't have it at all. In Luxembourg, there is 6 months. You need to wait, otherwise it's considered trading. So I mean, if you buy whatever you buy, just wait 6 months and that's it. And
that's
then
you're good. Great.
Yeah, so that's good. And there's a few other small things. I will not enumerate them now, but still, it's all this kind of knowledge. It's really important, because it really helps, and you don't need an advisor for that, really.
Yeah.
So what you're doing is great, because otherwise people pay. So it eats up your profit even more.
Basically, yeah. And, it's the great thing about these index funds is that they're very cheap. They're only like charging something. I don't want to give the figure because I'll get it wrong, but it's something like 0.2% a year. And you just think it's gone up. It's gone up 20% this year. So that's well worth paying for that. I mean, of course, markets go down as well, etc., etc. I'm sure people listening to this podcast will know that, but I think it's a very powerful way to invest, but it's also a very simple way to invest.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, so you didn't enter the crypto fever neither.
Well, I must admit, I did actually get caught up in the panic, not the panic, but I thought, you know what, I'll just put some money in there, and it's just been a disaster, to be honest. I think I must have done it like just before it crashed again, because it fluctuates so much.
Yeah, indeed,
I fully admit it was a punt. It was a bet. I thought, let's see if I can make some quick bucks, and surprise, it didn't work out. I probably sold it at the bottom, and then I've now rebought it again. I've decided I'm going to keep that. I've got about £1,000 invested in there. It started off as about 2,000, so I'm going to keep it in there and let's see what happens. But I'm not touching it anymore. I'm done with it.
It's really investing on steroids. I mean, it moves every time. It fluctuates. It's 24/7. I mean, even on Sundays you can trade. So it's a crazy thing. But okay, it can be fun. It can be profitable. But okay, it's a total different mindset. So let's not go into details. I don't say it's bad. I say it's a different mindset. I mean, I have a little bit, not much, but yeah, I have my experiment with it, and it's been okay. Nothing crazy. I don't drive a Lambo, but far from it. But yeah, I like to have a little bit as well. And then, of course, you're investing. I think you're on the good path. You're making the savings, or at least you live more frugally, more according to your values, not showing off. So, where are you on your road to financial independence? Or are you 2 years from it, or are you do you still have 10, 15 years? Or what's the plan here in overall?
Well, it's a good question, and I do track that. Not religiously, but I've got a figure in mind, which they say is 25 times your annual expenses. So I know what my expenses are because I track them. And I think my figure, I've chosen it to be around £750,000. So at the moment, I think I'm around 250,000. So I'm like 30% there.
Yeah.
So I've got my calculator, my spreadsheet. It's and if we average 8% for the next, I think I'm saying it's about 8 years off the top of my head. It's probably, I think I'm about 8 years off, but things can change. It may go quicker. And what I've seen is a lot of people, if you read blogs around, is I think I'm at the point where things start to accelerate because, I've got a decent amount in the markets, and as compound interest, 10% of 200,000 is more than 10% of 100,000. So it's only going to get better from here, I hope.
Yeah,
And
it's for those who start. I mean, you're starting with a good sum, but I mean, for those who start, it's very slow in the beginning. I'm not there yet neither. Huh? But it's very slow. But little by little, you see it's going faster and faster. So it's really rewarding. And I mean, but it takes a few years to go to where you see the point of or a lot of money. I mean, you never know, but to see it go faster and faster. But it takes time and consistency.
It does. Yeah, and that's it. I think it's just, I've been consistently just putting in as much as I can really every month. Mm-hmm. And it does sometimes it feels really quite dull. But
it is supposed to be dull. I mean, if you do index investing, it is dull. I mean,
exactly, and that's the point. And what I do is, I don't need to think about it, and it's almost automatic. I don't auto put it in. I must admit, I haven't got to the point where I've got a direct debit going in there. But every month, I do put a payment in, mm-hmm. depending on how much I've not got left. I try and I've got a target amount each month, and sometimes I go more, sometimes I go less. So mm-hmm. I don't try and live strictly to a strict budget on that. But it's about discipline, consistency. Mm-hmm. And I look back, even in 3 years, I mean, I can't really believe how much it's grown even in the last year. It's mm-hmm. it's kind of crazy. It's like, wow. Like I think my investments have grown by more than I earned last year in 1 year. So it's like,
that's awesome.
like you're just like, is that real? Is this actually mm-hmm. real? And you realize, no, it is real, and it's sort of happening. So I'm hoping that it will continue.
Yeah. Yeah, sure. And one thing, you talk about salary. I mean, I will not ask the number, of course, but would you consider that you're in the average salary earners in London, or a bit above, or a bit? Where can you give us a bit where you are, just to give an idea of, okay, this guy can put a lot of money on the side or not?
I think, yeah. I mean, I'm definitely in the higher end of the salaries. For London, I don't think I'm a particularly high earner. I'm probably like medium to high. Mm-hmm. But that's because London's insane, and there's people earning. Yeah,
some people can make 1 million in bonus, huh? But
yeah, exactly. So, those guys are in a different league. But in the UK, because we have statistics for the UK, I'm in the top 5% of earners in theory. But in London, I'm probably in the top 70%, I would say. So,
I think you tweeted about that, and I was surprised by the salaries, the wages in the UK. I thought it was low.
Yeah, well, it is. It's. I mean, London is its own beast.
London is. But
if you're on £50,000 in London, you'll be okay. If you're on £50,000 in Wales, you're going to be having the best life ever. You have so much money to throw around. So there's a big money can buy you a lot of things, and maybe when I do eventually reach my fire number, I might decide to sell up in London and move somewhere else in the UK that's a lot cheaper. I mean, I could do that now. I could sell my flat now and buy a house in Scotland if I wanted to now. But I wouldn't have any money left, so it's
not yet.
Or a job. So yeah. And I don't want to at the moment, so that's fine. But it's it's possible.
Okay, very good. So look, Mr. Wealthster, before we close, if somebody is starting their journey for FIRE, financial independence, they hear this interview or they read your website, which we will name later. But what would you say? How should they start looking at their FIRE journey?
Well, I think the first step is really to understand it, and one of the best places, obviously, behind my website is Mr. Money Moustache's website, and that's a very good resource, and he writes very well about it, and that's where you can get the understanding. The second point is you need to be honest with yourself and look at your current situation very harshly, because like I said, when I started, I made a false start by not facing reality that I had huge amounts of debt to pay off. And I think maybe you don't have debt, but you may have something. You need to think. You need to make a plan. So you need to make a budget. You need to do the boring things like that, and stick to it. That's it. Mm-hmm. So it's really that simple. And there's an initial excitement which you have the enthusiasm, and use that enthusiasm to get you going, I say.
Yeah. No, very good. Excellent tip. So yeah, Mr. Wealthster, we have come at the end of the show, and I want to thank you for sharing your story. I think it was quite fun, and but as well very instructive and very helpful for the listener. So thank you very much. But before I let you go, we always have our 3 quick fire questions. Are you ready?
Yes, let's go.
Okay, very good. So we talked a bit about your investments. So what has been your best investment so far?
Honestly, it's been the Standard & Poor index fund. Mm-hmm. That's it, Vanguard.
Okay, very good. And it has performed well indeed, at least over the last 10 years. So no, excellent investment. Do you have a book? Question number 2, do you have a book that you can recommend to anyone? It does not need to be a financial book.
I really like The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. And I think if you're in your 20s, it's a really good book to read because it might inspire you to do something awesome. Okay,
very good. Yeah, indeed. It's not my preferred book, but at least I know that the guy, he's relentless. He's resourceful and he goes to his goal. So maybe, yeah, indeed, it can help. It could have helped young Joney as well.
I think it's a love it or hate it book. Yeah. I'm in the love it category.
Yeah. And then the last question is: do you have a purchase you can recommend for under £100, which is 115 euros?
Yeah. Oh my gosh! I know you asked me to think of this before, and
because it's a trick one.
And I've forgotten to do this. I think you should buy yourself and your partner a really good dinner out for that. Go for a nice meal out.
Very good. I really like it, indeed. And then you can enjoy it so much. And sometimes, I was actually talking to a colleague of mine today, and then it's like, yes, I miss a good brasserie. It's like a place like we have in Belgium where you just eat a good steak. It will be under £100, but it's a good steak, a good wine, or a good beer, and it's great. It's fantastic. You don't need to have the high fancy one. I mean, sometimes it's good too, but it needs to be good.
Yeah, you want good quality. Treat yourself. Do it. Don't do it every day, but definitely if you're gonna spend £100, get yourself a decent meal out with your partner.
Oh, excellent advice. And then, of course, Mr. Wealthster, where can the listeners find you?
You can find me on Twitter. My name is The Wealthster, and I also have a website, which is my blog, which is called thewealthster.com.
Very easy, very simple. I will anyway link it in the show notes so the listeners can find you.
Great. Thank you very much. It's been an absolute pleasure being on the show.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you again. It was really good. I really enjoyed it as well. So take care and we'll speak soon.
Definitely. Speak to you soon.
I hope that you enjoyed this episode and that you learned something from it. And if you found it useful, please make sure you share it with a friend, or you can also rate the show in your favorite podcast app. This will help the show to grow. So if you do so, thank you very much. And now let's go through the key takeaways for today. Number 1, career. Sometimes what you might need is a course or an additional training to boost your career, not necessarily to retire. This can rejuvenate your interest in your career or field of work. Number 2, financial independence. From the New York Times article that he read, it sounded feasible and not that complicated to reach financial independence. He thought, I could do it too. If you have debt, you might forget where the debt comes from, but you still need to pay it off, and it prevents you from investing. And about this debt, the more you focus on something, the quicker it happens. The Wealthster paid off his debt in less than a year, while his plan was for 2 years. Of course, it helped to have a lockdown before the actual lockdown. But yeah, if you keep your expenses low, living the student lifestyle, for example, while you're working, you will realize maybe I can get by with a lot less actually. Number 3, financial independence in London. Basic utilities are the same as everywhere else in the country. The large city offers more opportunities and can help you to go further in your career and find higher paying jobs. The trick is not to live the high life by going out to bars and restaurants all the time. And I know it's tempting, especially when there's a new place, you want to try it out, of course. We don't say you cannot, we say moderate your lifestyle. And to save money, you can cook healthy meals at home and cycle to work if possible. All these little things add up. Number 4, investing. There are legal ways to avoid taxes on capital gains, special retirement accounts in the UK, the ISA, or you can buy and hold securities for at least 6 months in Belgium and Luxembourg. See what rules and special accounts apply in your country. Determine your target figure. This will help you to have this goal. For the Wealthster, that was £750,000. Investing in ETFs is a powerful and simple way to invest. It is dull, but the more you invest consistently, the more things accelerate. And at some point, your investment may grow more in 1 year than your salary. And then last but not least, to help you reach financial independence, the first step is to get an understanding of financial independence. So you can do that by reading the Wealthster's blog or Mr. Money Mustache's blog. Look at your situation very harshly, be honest with yourself, lay out all your debt, etc. And then 3, make a plan and stick to it. Use the enthusiasm to get you going. And again, I will repeat what the Wealthster said. The more you focus on something, the quicker it happens. So that was it for today. Thank you so much for listening. It really means a lot to me. Make sure you subscribe in Apple Podcast. And of course, please do not hesitate to contact me. If you have any questions or feedback, send me an email, john@joneytalks.com, or connect through social media at Joney Talks on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And amigos, once more, thanks so much for listening, and I'll speak to you next time.